A large explosion recorded the Lebanese capital Beirut this Tuesday. New acts of police repression in the city of La Paz and Santa Cruz were reported. The Spanish Ministry of Health reported 1,178 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmero. Lebanon suspends nationwide lockdown for 2 days, with restaurants and cafes allowed to reopen at 50% capacity. New nationwide lockdown measures were announced last week following a rise in cases after previous restrictions were gradually lifted. Lebanon had gradually lifted lockdown measures starting in May, and in early July it opened to Beirut airport to commercial flights after the closure of more than 3 months. But new cases have increased in restaurants, bars, clubs and resorts reopened. The pandemic struck as Lebanon was already mired in its worst economic crisis in decades, prompting fears that the country's fragile health system could collapse. This has dealt a heavy blow to the country, where more than 45% of the population lives below the poverty line and more than a third of the worker face as unemployed. A large explosion rocked the Lebanese capital Beirut on Tuesday, shattering windows of sovereign buildings and sending a huge plume of smoke billowing into the sky. The loud blast of Beirut's port area was felt across large parts of the city. There were no immediate reports or damages or casualties. The afternoon blast shook several parts of the capital, and thick smoke billowed from the city center. In Bolivia, local media reported on Tuesday new acts of police repression in the city of La Paz, as well as in some areas of Santa Cruz, all of them against demonstrators asking for the electoral schedule to be respected. The camp was set up in the proximities of the Supreme Electoral Court in La Paz, where several young people began a hunger strike to call for elections on the established date, September 6th. The protest was abruptly dismantled by police forces, and several demonstrators were arrested. Likewise, in the town of Santa Rosa de la Roca, one of the many blockades set up nationwide was violently repressed by security forces. Some local media reported that some of the protesters were wounded. On Tuesday, Argentina's Ministry of Economy announced that it had reached an agreement with 3 major creditors over the restructuring of $66 billion debt. Also, the Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez tweeted about the debt and the solution amidst COVID-19 pandemic. Argentina's formal offer submitted to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission contemplates the payment of $53 for every $100 of debt, improving payment terms. The Argentinian government said that the agreement will allow members of the creditor groups and other bondholders to support Argentina's debt restructuring proposal and grant the South American nation significant debt relief. Also, President Fernandez affirmed through his Twitter account that the country solves an impossible debt in the worst economic crisis, even amidst the pandemic. And in Chile, the Council of the National Institute of Human Rights joined the list of organizations that rejected acts of violence by armed civilian groups against the Mapuche people in the southern Araucania region. The Institute said that the eviction of Mapuche community members by civilian groups is a serious problem, since it is responsibility of the authorities to grant their rights. The Institute urged the corresponding authorities to investigate the facts of identifying those responsible. This weekend, a group of civilians violated the curfew and attacked Mapuche community members who were occupying public buildings to protest and support the shaman leader Celestino Córdoba and the other political prisoners who have been on a hunger strike for more than 90 days. The Colombian Supreme Court of Justice has opened a case against former President Álvaro Uribe Vélez regarding an alleged witness tampering. A series of public statements made by the country's president, Iván Duque, the vice president, Marta Lucía Ramírez, and the leadership of the Democratic Center Party have triggered numerous reactions to what political, legal, and social sectors consider as an aggressive campaign to intimidate the pressured judges while trying to confuse public opinion. Social organizations organizations demand respect for the court and its decisions. They also warn about wave violence that will start in the event of the ordered imprisonment against the former president. After a month of general protest, employees of the Asian Electricity Group started a strike that is causing a drastic impact on the service supply. According to local sources, they returned to work as a result of an agreement reached between the strikers and the current Director General of the Electric Governmental Group, Michael Presume. On July, after the naming of Presume as head of the company, protesters started to protest and accuse the newly appointed official of trying to privatize the company. They also claimed that he was involved in misappropriation and public funds examination, indicate that only 30% of the population of the Caribbean nation has electrical service. In several Asian communities, the electricity lasts for at least 4 hours each day, and the rest is generated by the local initiatives. According to the latest report from Johns Hopkins University, the regions of Latin America and the Caribbean have confirmed to date over 5 million COVID-19 cases. The U.S. university reported that 5,002,625 people have tested positive for COVID-19. The region death toll stands at 202,000. Brazil is the most affected nation with more than 2,750,000 COVID-19 cases and nearly 95 deaths. Mexico is the second most affected with over 443,000 infections and more than 48,000 fatalities. These two nations are followed by Peru, Chile, and Colombia as the most affected countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. Dominican Republic's Ministry of Public Health recorded on Monday 73,117 COVID-19 cases and 1,183 deaths. According to Health Minister Rafael Sanchez, from the total infected people, 6,260 are isolated in hospitals. On the other hand, there have been almost 200,000 people tested negative for carrying the novel coronavirus, and there are already more than 38,000 recoveries from COVID-19. Deaths multiplied by 5 in the last 24 hours. The COVID-19 patients were mainly registered in the Distrito Nacional, Santo Domingo, and Santiago. The damage caused during the hurricane season in Central America and the Caribbean will make children and their families more vulnerable in the midst of the pandemic, and this is a current concern at the United Nations. According to a report by the United Nations Children's Fund, more than 70 million children in the geographic area are directly or indirectly affected by the health crisis following COVID-19, and the more active phase of the hurricane season threatens to aggravate the situation. Displacement, damage to the infrastructure, and disruption of services due to the storms, particularly in coastal areas, could make children and families more vulnerable to disease and its impacts. Furthermore, the pandemic also affects the preparedness of the country in the region to respond to such disasters. I will be right back after this short break, so don't go away.
Hola, quiero mandarles un cálido abrazo a los compañeros y compañeras de Telesur que están cumpliendo 15 años de vida. Se ha convertido en este tiempo en un medio central para comunicar desde el sur global, para comunicar las miradas de los pueblos de nuestra América Latina. Así que un abrazo muy muy grande y por muchos años más de vida.
Welcome back to From the South. The Spanish Ministry of Health reported 1,178 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours, adding to the more than 8,000 cases reported over the weekend. The European nation reported 34 deaths in the last 7 days. The autonomous community of Aragon heads the list of territories with the highest number of daily infections, with 237 new cases, followed by Madrid and Catalonia with 67 and 54 new COVID-19 cases respectively. According to the country's health authorities, there are currently over 560 active outbreaks of the novel coronavirus. Tropical storm Isaias hit the American state of Virginia with strong winds and heavy rain on Tuesday after making landfalls as a hurricane near Ocean Isle Beach in North Carolina. The hurricane center crossed over the coast just after 11 p.m. on Monday with sustained winds of 84 miles per hour, and they decreased to 72 miles per hour by early Tuesday. Forecasters warned that tornadoes are possible. They also alerted the rainfall would remain a major concern and trees could fall, causing power cuts as Isaias moves north along the east coastline in the United States. About 80 miles north of Ocean Isle Beach, about 30 people were displaced due to a fire condominium complex in Surf City, new outlets reported. It is not clear if the fires were connected to the storm. No injuries have been reported so far. And protests in Portland, Oregon were declared unlawful assembly on Monday night as protesters confronted the state troopers who had taken the place of federal officers in the area. Officers could be seen taking at least one handcuffed person into custody as the gas to look like tear gas erupted shortly after the midnight Pacific time. Demonstrations had been notably smaller and more peaceful for the past few nights, as state troopers took the place of the federal officers deployed to Portland by U.S. President Donald Trump. On Tuesday, China accused the United States of outright bullying over popular video app TikTok after President Donald Trump ramped up pressure for app to be sold to a U.S. company.
For some time now, the US, without providing any evidence, has been using an abused concept of national security, has been abusing its state power, and has been unjustifiably suppressing certain non-US companies. This goes against the principles of the market economy and the WTO's principles of openness, transparency, and non-discrimination. It's outright bullying. China is firmly opposed to this.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also made reference to the EU statements on Hong Kong elections.
I want to stress that Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China. The election of the Legislative Council of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region is a local election in China and is purely an internal matter of Hong Kong. No foreign government, organization, or individual has the right or any reason to intervene.
Millions of people in the Philippines were ordered to stay home Tuesday as global coronavirus infections kept soaring, with the World Health Organization warning against relying on the vaccine silver bullet to end the pandemic. Philippines have resorted to reimposing economically painful restrictions on travel and business. More than 27 million people on the main island of Luzon, including the capital Manila, went back into a partial lockdown 4 weeks from Tuesday. People have been told to stay home unless they need to go out to buy essential goods, for exercise or for work. With the notice of a shutdown, many found themselves strained in Manila and unable to get back to their hometowns after public transport and domestic flights were halted.
Our families in the province are already worried because we already lost our jobs and now we are stranded here at the airport. So we will just stay here inside until our flight resumes. We will definitely experience hunger in the next few days here. I could probably endure the hunger, but not for too long, and I'm worried about the children, and we also have a pregnant woman with us.
And Spain's former king Juan Carlos has gone to the Dominican Republic after leaving his home country under a cloud of a scandal, according to Spanish newspaper reports. The Royal Palace announced yesterday that Juan Carlos, who abdicated in 2014 over a previous scandal, was leaving Spain to allow his son Felipe to act as king without his father's personal affairs affecting his reign. Spanish newspapers are assuring that Juan Carlos, who is keeping the title of King Emeritus, left the Royal Palace where he was living on Sunday before going to Portugal by car and flying from there to Dominican Republic. Although this last information, his lawyers said the former king would remain at the disposal of the prosecutor's office. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez said the government showed absolute respect for the decisions taken by the royal household concerning the exiled former king Juan Carlos. The former king has reportedly fled to Dominican Republic, but Sánchez says it is not up to the government to make the information known.
En primer lugar, el gobierno y yo como presidente.
First of all, the government and I as president express our absolute respect for the decision taken by the royal household. We express this absolute respect insofar as what is behind the decision taken by the royal household, which is to distance itself from allegedly questionable and reprehensible behavior by a member of the royal household. Institutions aren't judged, people are. In this case, Don Juan Carlos has clearly said that he is at the disposal of justice if necessary, like any other Spaniard.
And we have more stories coming up after this final break, so stay with us.
Eu queria mandar enviar um parabéns e um desejo de força, Telesul. Vocês são muito importantes na América Latina e na visão que o mundo também tem da América Latina. Então, força e parabéns pelo aniversário e espero que nós comemoremos juntos esse aniversário por mais muitos anos.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life, Fridays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. Thousands of Indian troops imposed a curfew in the Indian-ruled Kashmir on Tuesday, with razor wire and steel barricades blocking main roads in anticipation of August 5, the first anniversary of the day of the government stripped in the region of its autonomy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi imposed New Delhi's rule last August 5, promising peace and prosperity after 3 decades of violence that have seen tens of thousands of people killed in anti-India uprising. Officials announced a 2-day full curfew on Monday, claiming that intelligence reports indicate looming protests in the Muslim-majority region of 7 million people. Locals have called for the anniversary to be marked as the Black Day. Police vehicles patrolled the main city's Panigar after dark on Monday and again on Tuesday morning, with officers using megaphones to order residents to remain indoors. Meanwhile, India's health ministry announced on Monday the country's COVID-19 cases have surpassed 1.8 million. In the last 24 hours, the authorities reported almost 53,000 new cases. Meanwhile, 771 people with COVID-19 died during the past 24 hours, taking the death toll to 38,000 victims. India is focusing on testing more people. India has done more than 20 million COVID-19 tests till Sunday. The Asian country went into lockdown on March, the biggest quarantine in the world, restricting 1.3 billion people. This Tuesday, Iran confirmed over 2,700 new COVID-19 infections. This is the highest number in only one day for more than a month. As a precautionary measure, the health ministry called for the mandatory use of masks. Death and infections from the novel coronavirus have increased in the Islamic Republic. This has prompted Iran to make wearing masks mandatory in enclosed spaces and reimpose restrictions that were lifted gradually since April to reopen the economy. Despite the rule, people without masks can still be seen inside the capital shops and banks, and state television often criticizes them for doing so. The number is the highest since June 5, when the ministry reported 2,886 infections in a day. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the rise of the dollar against the Congolese franc is causing prices to soar, hitting consumers' purchasing power as well as business profit margins.
The central bank set this rate, which caused the dollar to fall instantly.
The dollar was at 20,000 Congolese francs, then suddenly dropped to 60,000 Congolese francs. I don't know whether to be satisfied with that or not. It's beyond us. Quite frankly, the government should have first considered lowering the price of products on the market instead of lowering the dollar directly. That is what concerns us right now.
The pandemic has seriously affected the economies of countries that have trade relations with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A 40% reduction in exports, a 30% reduction in imports, the result is a deficit in our trade balance. In other words, our country earns less foreign currency than it did before the pandemic.
Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa on Tuesday warned he would flush out opponents as right groups reported dozens of activists had been arrested in the crowd-cutting dissent.
My administration has faced many hurdles and attacks since its inauguration. These included the divisive politics of some opposition elements, the illegal economic sanctions, cyclones, droughts, and more recently, the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. All this was meant to undermine our projected economic growth and stability. As a result, we have had to constantly recalibrate our compass to ensure that we remain on course and that the standard of life of the majority of our society gets better and better. We will overcome attempts at destabilization of our society by a few rogue Zimbabweans acting in league with foreign detractors. The bad apples that have attempted to divide our people and to weaken our systems will be flushed out.
Lagos' key third mainland bridge is partially closed for renovations for a 6-month period, worsening traffic in Nigeria's economic capital. The third mainland is Africa's second-largest bridge, extending nearly 12 kilometers, 7.5 miles, along Lagos Lagoon to link Lagos Island, the economic heart of the city, with the mainland where most people live. Its partial closure has had a serious impact on the economy, with one economist saying that productivity loss due to traffic congestion comes to as much as $383 million.
They are charging us because of the inconvenience of the closure of the bridge and because of the traffic. Because the drivers feel they'll be in traffic for a while, longer than the usual time they're supposed to be in traffic or they're supposed to apply that route.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Laura Palmero. Thank you for watching.